Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today we have a 2020 Honda CRV and we're going to be showing you how to install the CURT Class 2 trailer hitch receiver. But before we do that, why don't we check this out and make sure this is something that'll work for you. So right off the bat, one of the big questions that we get asked in regards to putting a trailer hitch on your CRV is if you're still going to be able to utilize the automatic liftgate assist feature. Now, our CRV today is not equipped with it, but I can't show you. But I know from experience in the past, you can get them to work. All you're gonna have to do is kick your foot to either side of the hitch and it'll open up like it should. So since this is a Class 2 hitch, it's gonna have that smaller 1¼ by 1¼ receiver tube opening. So this is gonna work great for those of you that say already have those 1¼ accessories, or really primarily plan on only using smaller accessories, things like a bike rack, for example. If you're someone that plans on doing some towing or wanting to have access to more accessories, a Class 3 hitch may be a better option for you. It has that larger 2" by 2" opening, and if that's your case, you can find plenty of those options right here at eTrailer. The hitch does have a reinforced collar for extra strength, and I kind of like the looks of it actually as well. It kind of gives it more of a complete look. It is going to have the standard 1/2" size pinhole. Now keep in mind, a pin and clip does not come included, but if you need one, you can grab it right here at eTrailer. We're going to have loop style safety chain openings, and these should give us more than enough room to use just about any size hook that we might have. As far as the hitch's weight capacities go, it's going to have a 350-pound maximum gross tongue weight rating, and that's going to be the amount of weight that's pushing down on the hitch. It's a pretty good number, and you should be able to use those 1 to 3 bike racks, maybe even 4, depending on the weight of your bikes, just to kind of give you an example. As far as the maximum gross trailer weight rating goes, that's going to be 3,500 pounds. That's going to be the amount of weight that's pulling on the hitch. So it is the weight of your trailer plus anything that you might have on it. I do always like to suggest, never a bad idea, just to grab your Honda's owner's manual. That way you can make sure your CRV can pull much weight safely. Let's go ahead and take a couple measurements. That way we can figure out which hitch mounted accessories will work best. If you go from the ground to the top inside edge of the receiver tube opening, that's going to be right at 13½ inches. So if you do plan on doing some towing, chances are pretty good you're going to need to get a ball mount with a rise. If we go from the center of the hitch pinhole to the edge of our bumper, that's going to be right at about 1 inch. And you can use that measurement to figure out that if any folding accessories you might have can be stored in that upright position without contacting the bumper. So at the end of the day, you know, not a bad hitch. I think it's going to look good. For the most part, it's completely hidden. Really just going to see that receiver tube opening, and it's going to help you get the job done. Now, as far as the installation goes, really not too involved. It does take a little bit of time, but everything's pretty straightforward. So as long as you stay patient, really shouldn't give you a whole lot of issues. Speaking of which, let's go ahead, pull into the shop and put it on together now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here underneath the bottom of our CRV, and first thing we need to do is lower our exhaust a little bit to give us some extra space to work. Before we do that, what I like to do is take a strap and just run it from side to side. That way we can kind of control how fast and how far we let our exhaust come down. And if you don't have a strap like this laying around the house, you can always grab one right here at eTrailer. So to get our exhaust lowered, we're going to have 3 exhaust hangers, 1 on each side of our vehicle, just like this, above our muffler, and 1 more towards the center, which we'll get to in a moment. But to get these lowered, what you want to do is spray them down with some soapy water or some penetrating oil, which I've done. And then you can just take a pry bar and kind of work the rubber portion of the hanger off of those metal hooks. Just like that. I'll go ahead and do the same thing to the one on the muffler on the other side. And if you move towards the front of our vehicle, here's that 3rd exhaust hanger. Again, we're just going to take a pry bar and get it removed. Now that we have those hangers removed, we can go ahead and loosen up our strap and let our exhaust down a little ways. Now if you look here on the bottom edge of our lower fascia, we're going to have a couple of fasteners that we need to remove. In our case, we just have 2 plastic push pins, one on each corner. On some models, there may be 3 more, and if that's your case, you'll have to pull those out as well. But the way to get these out, you can just take a flathead screwdriver and pry underneath the head of it and work the whole fastener out. At this point, what we can do is get our hardware installed in our frame rails. And what we're going to do is take the coiled end of our fish wire, place it through this hole here, and just right out of this larger hole right in front of it. So you can kind of reach up there and pull that wire down. Sometimes it helps to put a little bend in that wire just to help direct it out. But once you pull it out, you're going to take a spacer block, put that over the coiled end, as well as a carriage bolt. And so that carriage bolt is going to thread onto the pull wire. And then you can simply feed the hardware up into the frame rail and pull it down until it drops out like so. We're going to have another attachment point. We're going to be using that hole right there. We'll take our pull wire, feed the coil in through it, and out of the larger hole behind it. To take that same hardware combination, spacer block, and a carriage bolt, and thread that on, feed our hardware up until it drops out. I'm going to repeat the same process on the other side of our vehicle because it's set up the exact same way. At this point, what we need to do is trim out a small opening on the bottom portion of our fascia here. There's a diagram and instructions, and I went ahead and followed that and marked out where we need to cut. Whenever you're doing this, make sure that you have nothing of importance behind there. That way you don't damage something. And with that being said, this is relatively thin plastic. I'm just going to use a pair of tin snips and probably a sharp utility knife to get this cut out. But you could use a pair of regular snips or Dremel tools, something like that. Kind of whatever you think is going to work best for you. So I'll go ahead, follow my lines, and get this trimmed out. And if you want to, you can come back with a hand file or something like that and kind of smooth out any of those rough edges. Now with an extra set of hands, we can take our hitch and raise it into position. Now you want to drop the fish wires through the corresponding holes in the hitch. Once the wires are through the corresponding holes, we can start to lift up on it. You're going to go above your exhaust, and you're going to have to kind of pull back on your fascia and squeeze the hitch up into position. Once your hardware drops through, what you can do is remove the pull wire. And on each bolt, you're going to take a flange nut. And we want to get at least one started on each side, hand tight. That way the hitch will support itself while we work on the rest of the hardware. Just kind of a quick tech tip. If you're having trouble getting the nut started because the bolt just wants to push back up into the frame, what you can do, the holes here are large enough to where you can kind of just take your finger and apply some pressure from the top down to hold that bolt still. That way it's a lot easier to get the nut started. There's going to be one more attachment point here in the center. You can see we have a square opening in the hitch that's going to line up with the tow hook opening. We're going to take the large carriage bolt and just push that through. Then we can go to the other side and get the other hardware put on. On the other side here where that big carriage bolt comes out, you can take the spacer block, put that over it, and again a flange nut, and get this started hand tight. Now that we have our hardware in place and hand tight, we can come back to the bolts here on our frame rail, grab an 11/16 socket, and snug them all down. And for the one here in the center, we're going to be using a 3/4 inch socket. Now that all of our hardware is tightened down, we can come back with a torque wrench and torque it to the amount specified in the instructions. So with the hitch all torqued down, now we can resecure our exhaust. So I like to start with this one here close to the front, spray them down again to lubricate them. This time we're just going to kind of hold everything with our hand and slide that hanger back into position. Now that the exhaust is supporting itself, we can go ahead and remove our strap. And last but not least, don't forget to take your push pin fasteners and get those reinstalled. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the CURT Class 2 trailer hitch receiver on our 2020 Honda CRV.